No building is designed to go so badly out of fashion as brutalist buildings did. Those stark and menacing forms that were emergent from the aftermath of World War II, they were just too heavy by the mid-1970s to make people feel comfortable. They were too heavy, they were too raw, and just too dominating. And the leading role in these buildings, which is concrete, it's a material that just refuses to hold up well when faced with time and neglect. And yet here it is. It's back in style again, and it's been gaining significant traction over the last 10 years. New brutalist buildings are trending. The old buildings are being protected rather than demolished. You can see them in fashion shoots, and it's a look that's desired in a whole new way. The question isn't why people hated it before. We already know that. The question that I want to ask, so why is it resurging now? Now, partly I'm sure it is just the fickleness of fashion. But I also believe that our relationship to materiality has changed. We can handle a little imperfection now. Also, the graphic design-like forms of brutalism really fit nicely in our photographed world. But mostly, I think we can trust ourselves a bit better to understand and work in harmony with the building's surroundings. In this video, we'll look at why brutalism feels so natural when paired with lush, tropical landscapes. We'll see how concrete has been quietly and beautifully rehabilitated by architects like Tadao Ando. We'll look at design culture turning back towards a little imperfection. And we'll see how so many of these menacing original buildings are now loved again and being protected rather than demolished. And lastly, we'll look at why and how it's gained such digital fame in our Instagram world. First, let's be clear about what brutalism actually is. Brutalism isn't so much a style in the decorative sense, it's more of an attitude and an ethos. The term comes from Le Corbusier's use of béton brut, which is French for raw concrete, to describe unfinished surfaces left by timber formwork, a construction mishap on one of his sites that soon became an aesthetic choice for the architect. As a side, Corbusier reportedly really disliked the word brutal when referring to his work, but the material logic stuck. So brutalism asked that buildings weren't meant to disguise how they were made. The structures left exposed, materials left unfinished, and all ornaments stripped away. Back then, it wasn't going to be about beauty at all. It was about honesty. And it was because it emerged after the Second World War, when cities needed housing, infrastructure, and speed. Concrete was cheap and strong, and at the time, unapologetically modern. As the decades passed, that raw honesty became very uncomfortable. These massive buildings didn't soften with age. Society also shifted its emotional response back to form rather than materiality. And so the maintenance of these buildings just stopped, politically, economically, culturally. And concrete itself became associated with neglect because these buildings began to be stained and cracked and weathered as concrete does. Brutalism puts all that out there. It has nothing to hide behind. It didn't intend to age so badly. It just did. When people say brutalism is ugly, they are usually imagining it alone. Grey concrete masses against a grey sky and a grey mood. But if you put it somewhere alive, somewhere humid and green and chaotic, something entirely different happens. Concrete stops feeling so brutal and it starts feeling grounded. I mean, look at tropical brutalism. It doesn't fight with nature at all. It lets the surroundings grow into it. Vines climb all over, and the concrete here seems to love the staining and erosion and decay. These are buildings that don't pretend that they are untouched and pristine. They wear the time openly, and they do it beautifully. Also, the forms that concrete lends itself to work really well here. Cantilevers and overhangs can cast deep shadows to shade from the direct sunlight. The texture and staining in concrete works well because it aesthetically complements the chaos in the green tree-filled landscape. Brutalism's honesty to form and material here make a lot more sense. Now, La Fábrica in Spain can have an honorary mention here. Originally a cement factory and a sprawling, imposing brutalist structure, it was meticulously renovated by Ricardo Bofill. The raw concrete forms and industrial character have been preserved, but blending it with rich greenery, he's managed to create a really captivating castle-like sanctuary. Which brings us to someone else who did something really gorgeous with the movement, Tadao Ando. Ando works almost exclusively in concrete, but he tempers it with a Japanese sensibility. No one ever calls his buildings aggressive at all. So there is an absence of obvious signs of comfort and domesticity, but he has so deftly translated form in which void and shadow manage to create a sense of calm. It is the same material, but it's just a totally different emotional register. Because Ando doesn't use concrete and mass to dominate, he uses it to frame light and silence and space. So you could say he rebranded brutalism, not as a statement of power, but as a somehow reverential, serene restraint. So this attitude towards truth in materials isn't happening in isolation. I mean, look around. Uneven plaster walls, raw timber, stone with visible faults, materials that show their scars are showing up all over. The design world has clearly shifted away from flawlessness and towards evidence of making and use. Concrete fits perfectly in this moment because, again, it never lies about its imperfections and its impermanence and its authenticity. Yes, brutalism doesn't age gracefully, it ages truthfully. And right now, truth has a real aesthetic value. There is another reason that brutalism is back, and it's a little less poetic. So the big old bully buildings from the 20th century are extremely difficult to erase. They're expensive to demolish because they're so structurally stubborn, and they result in disastrous amounts of air pollution and solid waste. Not to mention, structural elements are often one of the same as the architectural form, so load-bearing walls and supports are the building, which makes it really difficult to dismantle sections without compromising the entire structure. So many cities had a choice: destroy them at an enormous cost or learn to live with them. Alongside our changes elsewhere in our relationship to brutalism, what started as reluctant preservation efforts to avoid destruction eventually did turn into something else. Advocacy groups formed around many of the old icons, which helped restoration techniques evolve. Concrete maintenance has now become a really specialised and well-recognised discipline. So you could say that old brutalism didn't survive just because it was loved forevermore. It survived because its ever-familiar presence became loved, and over time this morphed into some new kind of societal respect. Finally, we need to talk about a new way that buildings are shown in imagery now. We don't always have to encounter architecture as a whole. We seem to like to encounter it in fragments, like a stairwell casting a shadow or a corner of raw concrete against the sky. It doesn't need any context at all. And brutalism thrives here, in the half reveal. In the age of Instagram, brutalism performs with its stark graphic shapes. It's gained significant digital fame, fueling these conservation efforts and influencing new designs. Not to mention films like Blade Runner 2049, minimalist fashion designer Rick Owens, and the industrial club scene such as Berghain. They all send its resonance much deeper. And if the permanence of a building is based on the loving care of its society, this photogenic type of fame can only do it a service. So it looks like brutalism is back because it aligns with the moment that we're in. We are comfortable with imperfection. We are drawn to material truth. We are increasingly fluent in a visual language of fragments, graphic form, surface, texture. And we're having an increasingly grown-up understanding of integrating our buildings with our surroundings. We called it ugly because it refused to offer comfort and because it showed its flaws so very publicly. But now, in an age of simulation seemingly everywhere we look, those very things are appealing to us again in a way that I think that we should be proud of.